name is Norm Volsky, your host, and this is the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast.
Thanks, Norm. It's an honor to be here, and it's been fun to work with you over the years.
Hello, and welcome to the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast with your host, Norm Volsky. And today we are thrilled to have Chris Fisher as a guest, who is founder of BenefitsAlly. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Norm. I'm excited to be here.
It's great. It's like Inception, it's a podcaster interviewing someone else who has their own podcast. So love to see it. So for all of our viewers and listeners that are not as familiar with Chris as I am, Chris is founder of BenefitsAlly. Check out his 3x3x3 videos to see him walk through different solutions in a concise 3 questions, 3 slides, and 3 minutes format. Fantastic stuff. We're a big fan of his pod on our pod. So Chris has experience working with companies including Patient, Apostrophe, brokerage side of benefits, was working at Cigna earlier in his career, brings a wealth of knowledge in the world of healthcare benefits. And we're excited to talk to him on this episode. So Chris, what inspired you to get into healthcare? You've been in healthcare most of, if not your whole career.
Yeah, most of it, certainly. My dad was in the employee benefits industry he was a lifer. He graduated from college, went to work for Great West, did kind of the normal career path, and ultimately owned his own firm. And so I was always exposed to it for my entire life growing up. And I wanted to get into it shortly after graduating from college, although at that time, back in 2004, there weren't a lot of group schools going. There weren't a lot of people just hiring kind of in that space, and everybody wanted experience. I didn't have any, so it was kind of a catch-22. So I did a detour. I spent several years in the technology sector working for Dell, and then a few years later, Cigna opened up the group school, and I was fortunate enough to kind of jump into it. And I've been in kind of employee benefits pretty much the entire time ever since. So I was exposed to it. I thought there was a lot of opportunity there. I saw it was a great career for my dad, and I thought it was something that I would enjoy doing.
Yeah, well, we're glad you made the right call. So you've spent time working at Patient, Apostrophe, Cigna. What did you take from those experiences that's helped you be successful at BenefitsAlly?
It's a good question, Norm. I think there are a couple of things, or I'll say 3 things in honor of my 3x3x3 challenge. But, number one, I think is just the importance of being responsive, especially when you're on the carrier vendor side. And I've spent time on the broker side and on the point solution carrier side. I think being responsive is critical. When someone needs something and they know they can get a hold of you and get a response and get action quickly, that's paramount. And so I've always prided myself on being really responsive, number one. Number two, I think, is that execution and correspondingly reputation matters. It's one thing when you're, and in particular, if you're in the health tech, fintech, you're a kind of a point solution selling some newer company or product, the execution on the back end is critical. They're not buying your sales pitch. They're not buying your slide deck. They're buying the execution and the operation that happens after that. So making sure you're working with an organization that can execute on the back end is critical, because nothing is worse than rolling something out and seeing it just fail miserably for a variety of different reasons. So, operational and execution matters a lot. And the third thing I would just also say, and it kind of ties into the first 2 things, is that reputation matters and is durable. I think it was Warren Buffett who said it, maybe not, but the idea that, it could take decades to build a reputation and seconds or minutes to lose it. And I think that's definitely true in the employee benefits industry. You can spend a lot of time building a good reputation, but even though the employee benefits industry is big, a lot of the people, talk to each other. And kind of once you get this reputation as someone or a company or a product that just can't execute, you can't deliver, you're not responsive, it's almost impossible to overcome those 2 things, or overcome that reputation. So again, being responsive, executing operational excellence, and then those 2 things tie into reputation. And you want to make sure you've got a good reputation in this industry, because if you don't, it's really hard to overcome.
I would agree. I think that's in any business, but especially a market that is this insular and where, peers talk to each other a lot. Like there's no competitive nature between the head of benefits at Target and the head of benefits at Walmart. They're like, hey, we both want our companies to do well. We can learn from each other without sharing anything that could put them at a competitive disadvantage.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really, really great about our space. What inspired you to found Benefits Ally?
So originally, when I founded BenefitsAlly, I was actually taking a detour back into the tech sector. I was working for a large software company called VMware,
Hmm.
and I kind of always had the idea for BenefitsAlly in the back of my head. And just the timing wasn't ever right. But essentially, the original idea for BenefitsAlly was just about there's a lot of innovative companies, programs, things happening in the employee benefits arena that a lot of employers, and by extension benefit brokers, consultants, advisors, whatever term you want to use, aren't aware of. And this was a decade ago. And the amount of innovation happening now in 2024 compared to what it was a decade ago is exponential. But that was the original idea: is that there were companies out there that are doing cool, interesting, innovative things that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I thought there was an opportunity to basically help employers and by extension advisors make smarter decisions using data and identify specific savings opportunities. And that's evolved over time, but it's always been tied back to this idea of people are busy. There's lots of cool stuff happening. How do we make it easier for benefit professionals to efficiently learn about companies or products that can help them?
Yeah, walk us through how Benefits Ally, works with brokers and consultants to partner, and like how do you highlight certain solutions, and is it more you share with them like, hey, here are the things I think you need to consider, or is it more, hey, what are you looking to accomplish and what are some hot buttons, and then let me curate what I think is the best fits?
Yeah, so it's really the former. Part of the challenge is as my network has grown, I've got 20,000 plus people who consume our content from Portland, Maine to San Diego. And if all of them were always calling, emailing me saying, "Hey, Chris, I've got something going on that's not particularly scalable." So what we tried to do, and this was really kind of the real evolution for us, was a few years ago, probably 2.5 now, we started doing something that I call the 3x3x3 challenge, which is basically these short form videos that are really like on demand elevator pitches where we interview someone that has a company or a product, whether they're in the financial wellness space or fertility, it could be a TPA, captive, on site clinic, anything kind of in the employee benefits arena. We ask them three questions, and then the three questions are the same every single time. We ask them, what do you do? Number one. How are you different? Number two. And then who's a good fit, for your product or service? Number three. What, how, who. And the reason we call it the 3x3x3 challenge is it's three questions, three slides, 3 minutes. So I think the consistency of it is really appealing for people. When you watch one of our videos that you're going to get the what, how, and who. It's going to be no more than 3 minutes with no more than three slides. Like
Yeah,
when we record a video, if we record one,
very refreshing.
yeah, if we record a video and it's 3:01, I would literally tell you, Norm, I'm sorry, too long. I will not publish this. We need to go again. So like I'm a stickler about that. And
Good.
I think in a world where people are busier than ever, it's forced brevity is really what it is. It's this idea about getting to the point and doing it quickly. So I think benefit professionals, and it was really designed for brokers, consultants, advisors. But we now have, Fortune 500 employers who follow our content. I have private equity guys who follow our content.
Mhm.
I have, executives at large national payers who follow our content. They're all struggling with the same thing. And so I think the ability to basically hear an on-demand elevator pitch from a vendor in under 3 minutes is kind of refreshing. And I think the other thing is that it lets the benefit professional who's watching maintain full control.
Yeah.
If you walk into a big industry conference and you're just cornered by salespeople who smell blood in the water, and like, oh, come up to our booth. I got a raffle for you or a prize, and you're on a webinar, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, they're handing out free hot baked cookies, but
yeah,
they're really just trying to
whatever.
get you to like, come in and hear their pitch.
Or hey, here's a DoorDash thing for attending our webinar. We'll give you lunch. Well, that's fine, but it's like, are they really interested in your product or service? Or are they just there because they got a free, DoorDash or Uber Eats gift card? Here, they're not, being, interrogated by a salesperson, which I think a lot of people like. And if you're watching a video, if you're watching a 3-minute video and you're bored in the first 20 seconds, X out. Who cares?
Yep.
And because our site is also not public norm, it's not gated, meaning that you're in full control. I don't report any data. I don't know, right? If John Doe watches one of our videos, I'm not sharing that data with that vendor. So they're going, hey, John, I saw your 3x3x3 challenge. How can I help you? That's just crazy to me. And I get there are other people who do that, and that's fine. But this puts the person watching in full control. It's on you, Mr. or Mrs. Industry Partner, to make your pitch so compelling that the person watching it wants to talk to you.
Yep.
I don't think it's a revolutionary concept, but maybe I'm a minority in this industry.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that resonates with me whenever someone asks me, like, what's the thing that the companies that have gotten to $100 million valuations or 500 million or over a billion, like, what do they all have in common? I'll say they can describe what they're doing, why it's important, and explain how they do it to a third grader in less than 45 seconds. And they can all make a very complex concept digestible for someone, with a third grade education. If you can do that, you're on the right track. If it takes you a half hour to explain what you do and why it's important, you're trying to do something that no other company has, truly accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got to, learn brevity and really understand like what matters and what doesn't. So I think that's really important. In addition to the 3x3x3 challenge, what else are you doing with brokers and consultants that is unique?
I mean, so one of the things that I learned, and I mean, look, we're always learning. And it's maybe another Warren Buffett quote. I don't mean to keep quoting Warren Buffett, but just this idea that I think really successful people, and I'm not saying I'm really successful, but I'm trying to get a little closer every day. Should say no far more often than you say yes. I think a lot of people get into this habit, and I certainly have done this in stages of my career where you say, yeah, oh yeah, cool, let's do that. I like that, etc. And now I'm much more apt to say no to a ton of stuff. So I get people all the time that are like, "Oh, Chris, can we do a webinar? Can we have more slides or different questions?" I'm like, "Nope, nope, nope. Can we pay you to advertise and be higher on our platform? No, you just don't do any of that stuff." I'm like, look, it's a level playing field. I don't care if you have a $0 marketing budget or a $10 million marketing budget. You're going to sink or swim based on the strength of your messaging on our platform and how it's resonated. Now, we do obviously do some other things. We put our content on YouTube recently. And it's funny you mentioned podcasts. We actually are not a podcast, although I've made converted to a podcast, but all our videos are on BenefitsAlly.com and on YouTube. We started putting together playlists of kind of the most watched videos because, to your point a couple questions ago, people will often ask me, Chris, what's hot, what's new, what's interesting? You see all kinds of stuff. And I would always hesitate to answer it because I'm not a broker, consultant, advisor. I know the things that I find interesting, but doesn't mean that you'll find it interesting, et cetera. So what we started doing was to kind of, inspired by the David Letterman top 10 list, is just showing people, hey, here's every 3x3x3 challenge sorted from most watched to least watched, over the last calendar month. It's not the total number of plays, it's total seconds watched. So that's kind of a way for people to quickly and efficiently see what other people are watching. And it's like, oh, I've never heard of these 3 companies. Maybe I should check them out. Or maybe the flip side is, hey, what are the like least watched videos? There might be a diamond in the rough there that nobody else is just paying attention to. So we've tried to do some of that stuff lately.
And how do you identify some of these companies to do the 3x3x3 challenge?
So I'm fortunate, Norm, now that a ton of them come to me. In the early days of doing this, when I first launched it, I thought I might do a couple a month, maybe 30 a year if I was lucky. And I think at a certain point, just the power of persistency is that it just starts to grow. And I think also because we don't gate our content, which is a pet peeve of mine. I understand why companies do it, but that runs antithetical to what we do, where you have to type in your name and email address to get access to something. I don't believe in that. And so because our content is easy to kind of access and share and people see it, it just starts spreading. And so, now a lot of industry partners who have participated in the 3x3x3 challenge will refer us to people. I get brokers all the time who will forward me emails. I literally talked to a broker in Indiana a couple hours ago who acknowledged, like, yeah, we get pitched all the time. I'm like, you can't say yes to all these meetings, can you? I said, no. So, well, cool. Well, just direct them to us. We'll run them through the 3x3x3 challenge and make that vendor prove they can be compelling in 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, and sometimes companies and products hate it when I say this, but the reality is, if a broker, benefit professional, employer, whatever is watching a video and they're bored in the first 3 minutes, it's not going to get better in half an hour.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense to have a 30, 60-minute meeting with a company that you're never going to do business with. Like, you're wasting everybody's time. So use this as a way to kind of cut through the noise. So we get a lot of referrals now from other people who've taken the 3x3x3, other brokers who've seen the 3x3x3. But occasionally I'll reach out to someone if I see something on LinkedIn or I see someone at a conference I've never heard of before. I'll say, hey, have you taken the 3x3x3 challenge? Oh, you haven't? Cool. You can sign up for free on our website. There's a link. I think it says take the 3x3x3 challenge. So if you're watching this and you got a company or product and you want to participate, hit that site, fill that format. It'll take you 2 minutes and we can book a time to record.
All right. Well, I'm going to be a proud referral source. I have a couple ideas of companies that I think, would benefit from being on your platform. And I think, it would be very valuable for your community. A lot of people work for big corporations and then decide, hey, I want to start my own thing. It sounds like everything you're doing is great value to the industry. My question is, how do you get value back by doing it?
So that's a good question. So a couple things. During my employee benefits career in the last decade or so, there are a number of things that have happened from a BenefitsAlly perspective. Number one, I've got introduced, and my community is like now larger than I could have ever imagined. I don't know if I have the largest network, but I've certainly got a pretty darn large network and people that know me that I'm just like shocked that they've kind of heard of what we're doing. So one of the things that has happened 3 times now over the last decade. A lot of times with startups or younger companies in the employee benefits space, I will get called and hired, sometimes as a consultant, but more often as a full-time employee. I've had some different full-time roles with apostrophe patient, new physician, where they go, Chris, a lot of people, marketing, just come on board and help us grow. I had an opportunity to work with apostrophe as a TPA for a while, sold to Centivo. I think, the second or third employee at Patient, and they're now like 100 plus. They're growing rapidly. And I've had a chance to work with the team in New Physician and help them grow as well. So that's part of it, is that it kind of helps me stay connected to the industry. But then also we do obviously monetize BenefitsAlly. And we've got a couple different ways we've done it in the past, but the main way we do it right now are these kind of invitation only events that we call innovation blitzes. So we basically, companies that we've had participate in the 3x3x3 challenge, when we think they're doing something interesting, we can basically help them narrow down their ICP, kind of their ideal client profile, and then help facilitate some one-on-one discussions for them. So, if you're a startup in Chicago doing something really cool and you want to connect with advisors in Texas or Georgia, Florida, we can often help facilitate some of those one-on-one meetings over Zoom. And I think for a lot of the brokers we work with, they love it. They get a new tool in their toolkit they might have never been aware of before. And for the industry partners, it's an effective way to help spread the word about what they're doing. Because the reality is, you can have the greatest widget in the world, but if the right people don't know you exist, it doesn't matter. And it's harder than ever to get your name out there in 2024.
Yeah, you can have the best of everything. If your sales and marketing strategy are off, you will not succeed in this market, at least. So that, really, really indicator of, future
100%.
success or future failure. What do you think a common misconception people tend to have about brokers and consultants?
There are lots. But I think, again, in honor of the 3x3x3 challenge, it won't shock you to say that I'll rattle off 3. And I could have a lot more, but I'll rattle off 3 to kind of keep it focused. Number one, or keep it short and sweet. Number one, brokers and consultants are a lot smarter than people give them credit for. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of industry partners make is that their slide decks, their pitches are way, way, way too long. If you're a diabetes vendor, and I'm use this in real world example, I saw a diabetes pitch, and their first 10 slides were essentially why diabetes is bad. Like that's essentially what they were saying for the first like 12 minutes. And
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking in my head, I was like, do you really think you're presenting to people who have never heard of this diabetes thing before? And like, oh, what's A1C or what's blood sugar? So I think a lot of companies spend a lot of time trying to show off how smart they are without kind of getting to the point. The brokers and consultants that most of these people want to work with are very successful, right? If you've built up a, multi-million dollar block that you're supporting, you're doing that because you're smart and good at your job. So
Yeah.
treat them as if they're smart and good at their job, number
Mhm.
one. Number two, I think is, again, be efficient use of their time. If everybody else is asking for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, ask for 15. If everybody else is asking for 15, ask for 12 or 8 or whatever. When you do that and you respect people's time, they appreciate it. When I do these innovation blitzes or 15 minutes long, I will literally be in a meeting and I will pull out a timer, like a kitchen timer on my iPhone, set it for 15 minutes so everyone can see it. And when that timer goes off, we are done and out of there. And I
Yep.
cannot tell you how many brokers have told me they appreciate that because they're respecting their time. So number one, again, brokers are a lot smarter than I think sometimes vendors give them credit for. Number two, just they're busy, and so when you respect their time, they appreciate it immensely. And I would also say, just number three, I
Mhm.
think for me, when I was a broker and even in working with the industry partners I choose to work with on, being responsive and easy to work with matters. I don't think every broker doesn't expect perfection from their vendor carrier partners, but what they do expect is when something goes wrong, you're responsive and you're working quick to fix it. And I think
Yep.
if you do those three things as an industry partner, carrier, vendor, whatever you want to call them, you're in a much better position to succeed in the coming years.
Outside of just participating in your 3 by 3 by 3, what are other suggestions you have for vendors that want to get in front of specific brokers or consultants? What are some other tips and tricks?
It's a good question. I don't think there are. So there are no shortcuts. I would say number one.
Yep.
This is not something that there's not a magic wand, magic spell you can say to kind of cast it. I think put your content out there. In as many places as possible. Obviously I'm biased. 3 by 3 by 3 challenge. There are other companies out there. Shortlist or benefit pitch. Dave Carrigan, great guy. I know Dave. Start a podcast. Do YouTube channels. Put your content in as many places as possible for people to consume it and find you. Would be big. I think the other thing, and again, is don't gate your content. I
Mhm.
get why companies want to do it. I get why marketing people say, well, if someone downloads this white paper and we don't know who they are, what's the point? And my response would be, if you gate content, you're making it harder for people to learn about what you're doing, which is counterintuitive. And also, it's trivial to spin up fake email addresses. I've downloaded tons of white papers and stuff like that. Tempmail.org, tempmail.com. Congratulations, you don't have garbage in your CRM because I didn't want to give you my real email address to get access to something.
Oh,
So
I have my AOL account for anything I don't want any responses to, but I do want access to something.
access to something. Yeah, I mean, tempmail.com, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
put a lot of content out there. Don't gate it. And I think the other thing, and just add value, right? That's one of the things that's been crazy to me about kind of the 3 by 3 by 3 challenge is the 3 by 3 by 3 challenge was never about me. Like it's always about highlighting other companies about what they're doing. And it's never, an overt sales pitch for me, but as you're adding value, if you add value, and I think this is a Zig Ziglar quote, maybe somebody else, but this
Mhm.
idea that, if you help enough other people get what they want, they will help you get what you want, or, karma basically, if you believe in that kind of thing. But add value in as many ways as you can. And that stuff comes back to you, in spades. If you're always trying to take and sell and, break through a brick wall, You might win some deals that way, but that's a really hard way to do business.
Yeah, I think when you're early in your evolution, whether it's a single person in their career or a company in their phase of growth, asking for help is a lot better than sounding or trying to sound like an expert when you're not one yet.
Nobody is an expert. We're all learning. You might have seen, I kind of can't believe I did this, but I threw something on LinkedIn last Friday talking about some mental health stuff I've been going with. And I was terrified to post it. And if you haven't seen it, it's still on LinkedIn. But I mean, I got like 30,000 impressions, like 600 likes and comments and texts just all over the place. It was just crazy. And I think, yeah, look, nobody has it all together, despite what social media would tell you. It's okay to ask for help when you're out there. And the last thing I would just say, kind of tied back into this, and this is true for anybody, right? Whether you're a broker, consultant, vendor, whatever, be different.
Yeah.
Andy Neary, talks about that a lot. And one of the very first videos I did for BenefitsAlly, which has nothing to do with what I'm doing with right now. You can still, it's actually still out there online. If you Google it, the video production company still has it out there. And I need to email him asking him to take it down because if they watch it and they're like, "Oh, Chris, I love this. Can you help me with can you do a DOM analysis?" I'm like, "No, I cannot. I haven't done one of those in 8 years." But it was just about just being different. There was like a kind of a somewhat of a hokey joke in this little video we put together. And I was like iffy on whether I wanted to include it or not. And I ultimately did. I'm glad I did. And the whole point of me saying this is if you look and sound and act like everybody else, you're not going to offend anybody, but you're not going to excite anybody either. Yeah. So would you rather have 100% of people say, "Yeah, Norm's okay"? Or would you rather have 50% of people say, "Norm is awesome, love Norm," and 50% of people say, "God, I really don't like Norm. I would never work with him"? Almost so, you're much better off being different and embracing the things that make you different versus trying to attract yourself. Just do things that are different because again, in the benefits world, recruiting world, anything, most people are going to have a preferred vendor they work with already, right? And whatever it is, accounting, legal services, I don't care. So if they've got to make a change to hire you, you better give them a reason to make a change. And the only way you do that is by being different in some capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Walk us through your weekly newsletter. Who is your audience and what are your favorite topics to discuss?
So the newsletter again has evolved, but it continues to evolve. We've got a LinkedIn or a couple LinkedIn newsletters, one on my personal page, Chris Fisher, and then one on Benefits Island. We have a Substack, but it's all the same content, no matter how you want to consume it.
Mhm.
But essentially, the LinkedIn newsletter is a standard format, basically every week, where we highlight the newest 20 3x3x3 challenges from
Mhm.
the date we queue that email up. And part of the reason I do that is multifaceted. But number one, it's designed to be a quick and easy email for people to consume that
Mhm.
they can read through. There's a brief description for each vendor, about 200 characters, so you can scan it, Norm, in 2 minutes and go, "Not interested, not interested, not interested. Oh, this is cool. Click here. It'll take
Yeah.
you straight to the video." So it's designed to be something easy for whoever wants to subscribe to see the latest 3x3x3 challenges, number one. But also, number two, I think it acts as an incentive and a reminder for the companies and products that participate to keep their content up to date. I did a poll a while back and I asked people, like, "Hey, how old is too old for a 3x3x3 challenge?" In other words, how often should someone update it? And the answer I got was typically between every 6 and 12 months. And I think part of the reason for that is, unlike a lot of the content that's out there, right? If you have a flyer that's in your inbox, you have no idea how old. Most time, there's not a date on the flyer. It says
Yeah.
this flyer was created on this date. Well, all of our videos are time and date, or they're date stamped, they're not time stamped. So if
Yeah.
someone's on our site and sees a video that's 2.5 years old, even if the information is still accurate, the perception people make is that, "Oh, I'm not going to bother watching this. Even if I like it, the chances are that this is still accurate is slim to none. So I'm going to
Yeah.
skip it." And so I like to reward people for keeping their content up to date. New videos get reshared in our newsletter. They get
Mhm.
reshared on social media. They go back to the top of our YouTube channel exhibit hall. So, just like Google, you don't want to be on page 6 or 7. You want to be on page 1. And the only way you do that is by keeping your content kind of up to date. So the newsletter to me is just another way to keep the people who see value in our content, again, employers, investors, brokers, consultants, payers, informed on the latest 3x3x3 challenges that we've recorded.
I love that you hold, all these entities accountable, whether they're valued at $1 billion or no one's ever heard of them. Like everyone's treated the same, which I really, really like. What is your vision for the next 5 years of Benefit Ally?
It's a good question. I obviously continue to grow it. We've probably done between 400 and 500 3x3x3 challenges at this point, probably over 500 if I think about it. Ultimately, I'd love to get to, 1,000, 1,500, kind of continue to grow it. Candidly, and if you're watching this and you've taken a 3x3x3 challenge and you're thinking about it, I'd encourage you to take it soon. I've had too many people tell me lately that, Chris, you're out of your mind. You should be charging to participate in this. You've got a huge following. You produce marketing content for people. So at some point, we'll probably start charging for it. Haven't done it yet, not for any specific reason, but we probably will start charging for it. Continue to grow the innovation blitzes. We're doing a lot of them right now, but demand is kind of outstripping supply. Right now, I probably only have capacity to work with 2% of the people who've taken the 3x3x3 challenge to do innovation blitzes on. So I'd love to ramp up that capacity. And the other thing, and this may be under the BenefitsAlly umbrella or something else, but I've thought about doing versions of the 3x3x3 challenge in other kind of industries or niches. I think the problem we're solving is not unique to the employee benefits industry. There are other industries that would struggle with this, but my network and connections and experience of the employee benefits industry. But I wonder if there are correlations in doing it in the property and casualty and commercial insurance industry, in technology. I think there could be, but that's kind of a long-term vision.
Yeah. I think there's plenty of markets where the key decision maker is inundated with different options, really hard to decipher between companies they really need to take seriously and, who aren't as up with the times. So I think it's a great idea. I also think you need to be at health and need to do the 3x3x3 live. Like set you up on a stage for a couple hours and just churn through dozens and dozens of companies. Have you ever talked to the health folks? Should
I
we?
have not. If someone's watching this and knows the
We're
health folks,
screaming from the top of the mountaintops.
yeah. So it's a good question. So I've done the 3x3x3 challenge live once. The U Powered Symposium. It was in Puerto Rico last year. Shout out to Emma Fox, and we're going to be doing it again in 2025. I think it's in San Diego, Orange County, somewhere in Southern California. I apologize
Somewhere.
if you're watching this. But the U Powered Symposium, Emma Fox, it's somewhere in Southern California. I think it's San Diego. But yeah, I mean, I've thought about doing it. The logistics of doing it are a little bit harder than I think people might think. It's not hard to do, but there's timing elements to it. You have people, you're worried about people are paying attention, or is it just a bunch of noise of the conference that they're kind of rolling through? I do think we will do more of it though, as we kind of refine it in. The other challenge, and you'd be maybe you'd be surprised to hear this, maybe you wouldn't be, but I'm still shocked how many people get incredibly nervous when they're recording the 3x3x3 challenge. I mean, not everybody is, but there are a lot of people that they're terrified to do it. And that again is a safe space, right? Just me and you. We do multiple takes. If you get a bad take and we want to do another, you can. So I think the idea of doing it live, in front of a bunch of people is kind of scary. So there are different ways to do it.
What happens when they actually pitch a bunch of consultants in a room or an entire benefits department at a larger employer?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I think that maybe there's something a little bit different about it in that it's going to live online. If they're pitching it in a room somewhere, it's not necessarily being recorded. It's not going to live. So the internet never forgets. So, yes, I can delete stuff offline, but there, still may be copies floating around in various places. And the other thing that was something I kind of thought about when we do them recorded, I can cut someone off at 3 minutes, and we had to figure the timing out where.
Oh, we'll get you bouncers, really big, strong bouncers that are just someone out of their seat at 3 minutes.
we threw a I think of like a casual poll or a post on LinkedIn asking about like how to call people off the stage, and it was everything from like have someone come out who dances salsa in Puerto Rico, like play salsa music and dance them off the stage. We heard like whipped cream pie to the face, and
Mhm.
what we actually ended up doing was the DJ. We had an air horn sound, so an air horn would go off at 3 minutes. But fortunately, we had nobody go over 3 minutes because we had a timer on
Well,
the
because
little
everyone knows your
screen.
reputation. They know you don't mess around. If it's
Well,
three,
yeah, I mean, it's just, when you're staring in the face and you see like 10, 9, 8, they don't want to be the one getting air horns. So it was like, and if you want more information, I'll be at table 6. Thanks, bye. So, look, I think we'll do more of it. I've thought about doing it at Health and SIA, et cetera. So
Mhm.
yeah, look, if you have an event that you're hosting, whether it's Health or SIA or Benefits Pro or whatever,
Mhm.
and you're looking for ways to add more value to, especially your sponsors.
Mhm.
Sponsors, I think, are desperate to always get their message out in front of the audience. That's why they attend events like this.
Yep.
There are ways to do the 3x3x3 challenge live, I think, in a way that could add value to your event, whatever it is. So,
Well, putting two people together, making 1 plus 1 equal 3 or more is kind of what I do all day. So I'll
sure,
try to get you talking to the powers that be that,
that'd be
can
great.
make a really good match.
Love to do
So
it.
you talk to benefits consultants and brokers all the time. They're inundated with a lot of categories, diabetes, ton of options, musculoskeletal, mental health, things as, niche as caregiving and gastro, like even have half dozen plus
Mhm.
options. Are there any areas of industry that benefits brokers and consultants are like, we wish we saw more of these categories that no one's touching?
That's a really good question, Norm. Probably, but I can't think of any offhand, right? I mean, the
Okay.
sheer amount of money, in venture capital, private equity that's poured into anybody with a half decent idea, I think has been explored, and I do think there will be, I'm not the only person to think this, some bigger consolidation. Do we need to have 36 companies in this space? Probably not. And I think there's a lot of kind of point solution fatigue from benefit professionals and employers out there. I haven't necessarily seen that. Obviously, hot topics right now are the same things that a lot of are talking about. GLP-1s obviously are hot. There's a lot of, interest around women's health in various different capacities, whether it's fertility, menopause, et cetera. See a lot of that stuff. You're seeing a lot of growth and explosion interest in captives, kind of alternative financing programs,
Mhm.
as fully insured premiums have continued to rise. I can't think of anything specific, but I think the big thing I would just tell any kind of company that's out there thinking about doing something is just make sure that the problem you are tackling is worth solving. Because the thing I talk a lot about with industry partners that are kind of frustrated about their response to their 3x3x3 challenge, or they're like, Chris, we really want to do innovation blitzes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to pass.
So that's the area you're a little bit more selective with, where you're like, hey, if I'm going to invest that amount of time, I need to make sure it's something with enough meat on the bone.
Yeah, I mean, the way I tell people, so look, everything that we do on the 3x3x3 challenge and the innovation blitz, by the way, is kind of caveat emptor, buyer beware thing. Like I can't do a ton of vetting. And part of the problem is, Norm, every broker consultant has different vetting processes or standards. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, whose vetting process am I following? And there are brokers that, love PBMA and really don't like PBMB, and there are other brokers that feel the exact opposite. So my attitude from the 3x3x3 challenge perspective is, hey, if you're willing to step in the arena and follow the format, and you're in the employee benefits arena. I'm not doing this for, hey, we
Yeah.
do tax accounting services. But if you're in the employee benefits arena, bring it on. The innovation blitz is a little bit different because I'm asking a broker to invest 15 minutes of their time with that particular company.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that the benefit professional broker consultant feels like at the end of it that 15 minutes was worth their time. Whether they do business with them or not, it's just it's a good tool for them to kind of know about. And not every company meets that kind of criteria. The way I look at it is, hey, if I was a broker consultant still, is this thing I want to know about? And
Mhm.
so I would tell the younger companies out there, make sure the problem you're solving is worth solving, because a lot of companies get frustrated. They're like, Chris, we had 48 people at this conference. They never called us back. or we never got a proposal opportunity. I'm like, well, why do you think that is? They may have given you good feedback. They may like what you're doing, but the reality is, and this is one of the dirty
Gobble
little
isn't high up in their port.
you're 100% right. It's like, okay, if I'm John Doe broker and I've got a mid-year strategy session with a group, I might have 3 things to talk about, maybe 5 at the most. It's probably somewhere closer to 2 or 3. And there are 100 vendors that are in his inbox. You got to be in the top 3. You can be number 9 and be better than 90% of the other vendors he talks to. But if you're not high enough on the priority list, it doesn't matter. So that's where I think going back to messaging, responsiveness, being different are critical to make it where that benefit professional wants to talk about you versus putting in a drawer and just not ever looking at it again.
What do brokers and consultants say they want to hear in your 3x3x3s? Like the ones that reach out to you after and say, hey, I saw this 3x3x3, really like that company and idea. I want to learn more. Do you ever ask them, like, what did you hear? What did they say that compelled you to pick up the phone and actually seek this out?
So 2 things. That's a good question, Norm. Number 1, I typically don't get those messages from people because on our site, at least on BenefitsAlly.com, which I control, there's a button on the site where they can click here and it will literally open up Outlook, Gmail, Mail, where they can send a message directly to an inbox of that company. So I don't.
I don't. It's easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, because again, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, Chris, I saw, can you use me? Like, yeah, I can, but that's just one more step of the process. Like, how do we make this easy? When I talk to brokers and consultants about like the things that they like, I think the big thing to me, the meatiest part of the question or the meatiest question of the 3 is how are you different? Because there are some true unicorns where there's nobody else doing something like what a company's doing. But the reality is, if you're doing it, there's probably somebody else doing something pretty close to it at the same time.
And if you are the first and you are successful, there will be imitators.
There will be other companies. 100%.
You won't be the only one for long, even if you are temporary.
So just really nailing that, how are you different? So again, if you're a captive, if you're a TPA, if you're a level funded program, if you're a international sourcing, telemedicine, lifestyle spending account, whatever, nailing that, how are you different thing, where it incentivizes them to kind of reach out is really important. The other thing I would just say, if you ever take the 3x3x3 challenge, we have a whole series of emails with best practices and tips. But one of the things that I always tell people to kind of think about is, keep it simple. I think a lot of people get so locked into this idea about we do all this amazing stuff, and I want to tell you about all of the amazing features, benefits, whatever. And I'm like, you can't do it. You don't have the time to do it. You're not going to sell a broker, consultant, employer on your product in 3 minutes. Don't even try. What I would tell people to think about is, and this is even true in the innovation blitzes, if I would say, hey, what do you want someone to remember after watching this video or after the 15-minute meeting, after whatever your engagement is, what do you want them to remember? And like being very thoughtful about what those things are, and then only trying to focus your presentation on making sure they remember those 3 things. I kind of always joke with people. We used to do something called A+ pitch a long time ago. It was basically around message refinement. I don't do a lot of it anymore. But I used to joke that to have an A+ pitch, you need to nail B, C, D, and E. It's got to be brief, clear, different, engaging. And the clear thing to me is something so many vendors screw up. They make it way too complicated in the effort to sound smart. And the problem is if someone watches a video and they're not crystal clear on what you do, you're done. Doesn't matter. They're going to file in a drawer and say, if I don't get this, my colleagues, my clients, my whatever aren't going to get this, you're done. So to me, you should swing in the opposite direction about making it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, right? To me, the smartest people in the world are good at making the complex simple. The people that make the simple things really complex, you're going the wrong direction.
Yep, 100%. Any bold predictions for the benefit space in the coming decade?
Man, I think the greater focus on transparency and innovation with, some organizations out there like Health Rosetta and the AFHCA and other consortiums are working to lower the cost of healthcare, improve the quality of healthcare, do all the same things that are out there. I don't know, Norm. I guess the things I would say that I would hope for, I don't know what's going to happen, but the things I'd say that we'll hope for. Number one, I hope that we can, truly make an effort to, lower costs and improve quality. And I think we're getting closer, that there are companies out there that are doing it. We just need to scale those initiatives and know what's working to more employers. And then the other thing we've got to do, as I've spent some time with some family members, et cetera, in the healthcare system in various capacities, is we've got to make the doctor, nurse, the clinician, that side of healthcare function better for those people, because doctors, nurses, EMTs, PAs, they are overworked, underpaid. And, there's a reason that so many of them are retiring or getting out of it. And we're all in for a world of hurt. We're all going to need healthcare at some point in our lives. We don't need it already. And I know I hate the word provider side, the clinician side, but if we don't make it where these people want to practice medicine, want to help people, we're going to be in for a world of hurt. So I hope that and I know there are people that are working to make it where it's a better experience. And the things we're all doing and that are part of the employee benefits ecosystem are doing it to support doctors, nurses, et cetera, empowering them, not making their lives more difficult, because we can't afford to, drive more people out of the industry.
I think it's really important that people in this industry, especially the ones that kind of put themselves out there on social media platforms, practice what we preach. Like, how do you participate in wellness? Do you have any certain exercise routines? Any ways you reduce stress?
And I wish I did, because I'm stressed and anxious. And again, if you saw the post, I've got my own transparent struggles around mental health, et cetera. I'll throw two things. So one of my resolutions this year, I'm not a big New Year's resolution person, because most New Year's resolutions to me are like well-intentioned, but have no chance of happening. Hey, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight. I'm going to go run a marathon, et cetera. To me, New Year's resolutions can be fun. So one of my New Year's resolutions this year, as someone who loves to laugh, but also loves stand-up comedy, was to see 24 stand-up comedy shows live in 2024, which I'm tracked to do. So that's kind of a cool, I feel like laughter de-stresses me stuff. I've seen 8 Bargatze, Fortune Feimster. If you're a Arrested Development fan, I saw David Cross Tobias from Arrested Development doing that. That's to me is a cool way to de-stress, etc. And the other thing now I see is over my shoulder. About 18 months ago, I got a cheap massage chair from Best Buy, relatively cheap. And, as someone that loves massages, just being able to get into it and it's no replacement for a real massage, but, it heats up, can work some tension out of your back or whatever, sit there for 20, 30 minutes, read a book. I highly recommend it. I continue the model that I bought, and it's, kind of a Best Buy in-house brand, and it's not super fancy, but it gets the job done. So,
I love it. And I saw your dog as we were beginning this podcast, so I'm sure you walk with the dog occasionally. And
I do. I've got two dogs who are not the best on the leash. That's probably says more about me than them. Just not being the best trainer. So no, we do some walking, and we also go out to the country and do some big dog parks, let them run and go play with other dogs. But yes, I do have 2 dogs.
And you mentioned the rise of GLP-1 space. I think one really important thing for health, which I try to emphasize at the end of each podcast, is in the US, it's very hard to know what is healthy to eat, because a lot of foods are marketed to us as health foods. They're absolutely not healthy at all. Anything you home make, dinners at your house that you're like, hey, I really like this recipe. It works for me. It's one of my go-to recipes, and maybe it inspires someone else to try something new?
That's a good question. I can cook, but because I live by myself, I don't cook a whole lot. And I'm in the process of trying to get back down to my weight and jean size pre-COVID, which is an ongoing, struggle right now, but we're taking it a little bit at a time. So I do a lot of pre-packaged. There's some pre-cooked meal places here in Houston that are, gluten-free and low sodium. So it's kind of calorie restriction for me. But one thing that I have cooked in the past, it's delicious and super easy, is a carrot ginger soup. And I think it's from Epicurious. If you're watching this, you're like, oh my God, I love carrots and ginger. It's absurdly easy. It's like carrots, tomatoes, ginger, garlic, a few other things. You know, boil it, cook it, and you throw it in a blender and blend it till it's smooth. And it's ridiculously good. And it's really, really easy. So if you're looking for something that is healthy, just a bunch of vegetables and ginger and carrots and other stuff in it, so maybe some chicken broth or veggie broth.
That's great.
It's really good. I'll find the link. You can message me and I'll send you the link. But I think it was on epicurious.com, carrot ginger soup.
I love that. Well, I'm a big home cook. I try to eat extremely healthy. And, I think I've seen a similar soup to the one you just mentioned. Once you start doing it consistently, you can start being a little bit more creative and knowing
Mm-hmm.
like what you can add just based on what you have in your house. Like
Mm-hmm.
to that soup, if you have like a roasted sweet potato, if you want to put like a half cup of like red lentils or yellow lentils in there,
Sure.
like you can just mix things up and like it usually tastes pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So, just want to remind people when they're looking at a recipe, it's not like chiseled in stone. You can always add a couple extra things that are laying around the house that might be going bad. Vegetable soups, they're just like great melting pots. So,
Absolutely.
hopefully a little bit of inspiration for our home chefs that watch and view our podcast and your 3x3x3 challenge. So again, Chris, thank you for joining us on the Digital Health Heavyweights, and would love to collaborate, continue to do so going forward.
Thanks for the opportunity, Norm. Great podcast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below if you enjoyed it.